All plus this. This all 3P. He wants that.
Shall I move it into
Good afternoon, friends. Yeah, this is Friday afternoon, and we from AVMC Scientific Society and Constituent College of VMRF are back with another episode of Forefront of Future Frontiers, the medical webinar series. This is for your kind information. We are now in Series 8, and the theme for Series 8 is Emerging and Re-emerging Infections. And we are here today on episode number 40, right? And we have an interesting speaker aligned for you today. We have Dr. Pradeep Deshmukh, who is the Dean of Research and also the Professor and Head of Department of Community Medicine from AIIMS Nagpur, who will be talking to us about malaria eradication, the prospects of malaria eradication. So before we move further, I would request our Dean to welcome the speaker. Over to you, Dr. Kutur.
Thank you, Professor Mahalakshmi. I am indeed privileged to welcome our speaker and the participants, Dr. Pradeep Deshmukh from AIIMS Nagpur, for this platform of Triple F, which is going on for the past 7-8 months with very much gaining more of popularity. And now, one thing, we have been addressing of so many health issues, so many inventions, etc. Now, this under the emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases, we had microbial resistance, etc. in the previous sessions. Now we ventured into this other infections, the parasitic infections, and this malaria is age-old disease, age-old disease and the deadliest disease as on today. Even though we had a euphoria of the total eradication and zero death during the time of our independence, again it has been re-emerged in 70s and again, and of course, National Malaria Eradication Program now of India, has again set forth the goal, and the global target is 2030, and India has taken steps that to achieve that 3 years earlier, which of course requires a lot of commitment and which is possible. That's what is the beauty of that. And in such a scenario, our AVMC platform has been a part of this. Even though the Pondicherry hosts after that vector control research center here in Pondicherry, but Pondicherry is not one of the territories or states got a maximum number of cases. The maximum number of cases have been over there in the Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, etc. But anyhow, we are fortunate here in Tamil Nadu as well as in Pondicherry. And it's good that the person who has done some pioneer work in this will be sharing his thoughts on this ever burning problem. And we are very optimistic. Such soon in the next couple of years, we should be able to control that. You muted me, Dr. Mahalakshmi.
Sir, no, sir, that one. Somebody was making noise.
So in the bargain, I also got muted. So I was telling that now, of course, the numbers of deaths are not in thousands or anything. It's only in a couple of hundreds. So, but still, the number of affections have been quite many. So the government has taken all the precautions, and so many programs are being encouraged. National Malaria Research New Delhi, that is the center which is coordinating that. So I once again take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Pradeep Deshmukh to share his first-hand experiences to the benefit of all the participants over here. Over to you, Dr. Mahalakshmi, to introduce.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Let me formally introduce our speaker to the audience today. And Dr. Deshmukh, he is currently the Dean Research and Professor and Head of Community Medicine. Sir hails from MGIMS Sevagram, and he has participated in consultancy for various national and international level organizations, including UNICEF, USAID, WHO, etc. He has developed expertise in the field of epidemiology and biostatistics through his various involvements in more than 35 number of community-based research projects. And the USB of all his work has been involving the community in the decision making. So I think that is what has been the major thing. He's got more than 100 publications in national and international journals. He has a H index of 27 and his research case score is more than 28. His citations number to almost 2,500. He's written several chapters in books and also written a lot of modules in the manuals. He has conducted of late, like he's very interested in conducting various training programs and workshops for junior level faculty across India on the topics of epidemiology and biostatistics and research capacity building. So these all he has done, and he has got a lot more things in his CV. But if we keep talking, we won't have time for sir to speak. So I'll stop with this, and I would request Dr. Deshmukh to share his presentation. And before we move, I have certain announcements for the participants. Please put your questions in the chat box. And the other thing is this program is being live streamed in YouTube. So you can see that live, one small red color thing on the thing. And we are also recording this program for posterior use for academic purposes. Over to you, Dr. Deshmukh. You are the presenter now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
At the outset, let me thank Professor Bhatt, Professor Kotur, Professor Mahalakshmi, and management of AVMC Scientific for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts on malaria eradication and its prospects. In 2015, Global Framework for Elimination of Malaria was declared, and I had my reservations. I thought it is like dreaming big and is not achievable. In 2018, Lancet Commission published its report, which again reiterated my reservations and made some recommendations about how to overcome these reservations or challenges. And today I am sharing the same here. Another thing is that the story of malaria for India and the world is same. So I'm not making any distinctions between malaria in India and globally. We know in 1955, Global Malaria Eradication Program was launched. In India also, we had a similar thing. In 1953, we came up with National Malaria Control Program, and the main strategy was the residual insecticide spray. And with that, we could bring malaria under control. The child spleen rate was reduced by 75%, and the child parasite rate was reduced by 60% by 1958. And encouraged by these results, in 1958, in India also we declared the goal of malaria eradication. But as we progressed, the insecticide spray remained the sole strategy, and over a period of time, the malaria started coming back. And this global malaria eradication program was that ended in July 1969. This program certainly had some benefits, but ultimately it was a failure. The benefits were like expansion of routine health services, creation of essential infrastructure which can be used by other programs, especially vector-borne diseases control program. Also led to economic development, leading to breaking the vicious cycle between poverty and disease. Reasons for failure were lack of political will, poor leadership and management, poor understanding of disease epidemiology, and early development of drug as well as insecticide resistance. And lack of funding was also a major reason. So from 70 to 2000, we just were hopeless, and we just talked about resurgence, drug resistance, insecticide resistance, and just wanted to maintain status quo. The incidence of malaria should not go up, and there should be minimal deaths due to malaria. That was the objective of the program for this period. So by the end of 20th century, we landed up with a situation like there occurred one death every 30 seconds due to malaria. And it is said that half of the population ever lived on this earth died of malaria. There were 400 to 900 million febrile infections every year in more than 100 countries, and only 20% of that could be detected by the health system. Pregnant women were at higher risk of dying, and children were at higher risk of born low birth weight. Children suffer cognitive damage as well as anemia. Malaria also leads to economic burden. Families who suffer from malaria spend up 25% of their income on treatment. In 1995, countries with malaria had income levels of 30%, 33% of those without malaria. In 31 countries with intensive malaria, grew 1.3% less per year than those without malaria. There was loss of 15% of GDP over 15 years in 25 high endemic countries. A reduction of 10% in malaria magnitude led to 0.3% higher growth in certain countries. The burden of malaria and poverty, we know that they go hand in hand. The darker the blue color, you will find the brown color is also darker. Higher the malaria burden, higher is the poverty. Or we can say higher is the poverty, higher is the malaria burden. So that vicious circle goes on and on. We know the spending in malaria is beneficial. Every dollar spent on malaria control gives us multiple returns. And hence, we need to invest more in malaria control. At the turn of the millennium, the first 15 years, 2001 to 2013, again, government realized that we need to act against malaria. The global advocacy began, and there were expansion of malaria interventions. And this expansion of malaria interventions led to a 47% decline in malaria mortality rates globally during this time period. It averted an estimated 4.3 million deaths. In African region, the malaria mortality rate in children under 5 years of age was reduced by 8%. Global incidence of malaria was reduced by 30%. Target C of MDG 6, that is, they are halted by 2015 and began to reverse the incidence of malaria and other major diseases has already been achieved. 55 of the 106 countries that had malaria transmission in 2000 were on track to achieve the goal of reducing malaria incidence by 75% by 2050. So by these achievements, WHO came up with Global Technical Strategy for Malaria 2016-13. And the vision was a world free of malaria. The goals were to reduce malaria mortality rates globally by 90% compared with 2015. Reduce malaria case incidence by 90% globally compared with 2015. Eliminate malaria from at least 35 countries in which malaria was transmitted in 2015 and prevent re-establishment of malaria in all countries that are malaria free. WHO suggested a three-pronged strategy. The first one is ensure universal access to malaria prevention, diagnosis and treatment. Pillar 2, accelerate efforts towards elimination and attainment of malaria-free status and transform malaria surveillance into a core intervention. All these three pillars need to be based on innovations and enabling environment. There is need for strong political and financial commitments, multi-sectoral approaches, cross-border and regional collaborations need to be there to be successful. But there are certain challenges like social disruptions such as war. We know certain African countries wars are going on and their malaria control, malaria is a high burden. Then there is a challenge of disruptions of healthcare services such as Ebola or recently COVID-19. Resurgences and re-establishment of malaria, climate change, which is very basic to malaria epidemiology, therapeutic efficacy of ACTs, drug and insecticide resistance, which are growing every day, and the mutations. To be successful, we need to be aware of this and we need to prepare our strategies to address these challenges. In 2018, Lancet Commission on Malaria Eradication published their report. They modeled how it is going to be by 2050. First, they took this current scenario. What are the current interventions going on? At what level these current interventions are going on? And they, as per their model, you can see this will be the change. If we continue current interventions at current scale, then we will not reach to eradication by 2050. There will be widespread malaria. It will go down, but still it will be widespread, especially in African countries. If we have enhanced interventions, then we will be able to eradicate malaria though there will be some pockets of malaria here and there. And they concluded eradication by 2050 is bold but attainable. So what we need to attain this goal, bold attainable goal, we need to have enhanced intervention. These enhanced interventions are 4. Better management and operations of the program, encourage innovations and incorporate new tools, committed financing, and committed leadership, governance, and accountability. Coming to management and operations. So the sector-wide change needs to be managed. We know that in India, malaria was a vertical program and then it was merged with the general health services. But the malaria workers, the peripheral workers, they were merged into the system. The malaria worker became the multipurpose worker. But still there is a hierarchy. There is a district malaria officer who sits outside district health office, and there is a separate reporting format, separate monitoring system for that. The funding also is channelized through a different separately. So this change has not been managed well, and it has its implications. Today we know malaria is, when the monthly review goes on, DHO is not interested in reviewing the malaria situation or activities. So we need to focus on this and manage the change sector-wide. We need better data for decision making. The MIS in our country is really poor, and it hurts decision making. With the advent of and the access to the technology that we have today, we need to have better data, quality data, so that appropriate decisions can be made. Targeting and tailoring interventions. We have now, like, geographically, India is such a big country, different country, and the malaria epidemiology is different in different parts of the country. So we need to take into account the local situations and then design the interventions which will suit to that particular situation. For example, outdoor transmission of malaria is growing now, and we need to tailor our interventions to tackle this problem. Prioritizing human resources. Malaria needs skilled, experienced manpower, and if we keep changing this manpower, the effect will not be there. We should not be shifting the skilled, experienced manpower to other departments as and when needed. So we need to prioritize human resources for the malaria eradication activities. Active and sustained community participation, which is key to the success. We know we have National Health Mission, which is totally based on community participation, and there is like village health sanitation committee, and at different facility levels also there are different committees which are supposed to guide the activities at different facilities. The community is also supposed to be a part of preparing program implementation plans. But today we know what is the situation. They are hardly involved in the decision making or in activities, and even they are not empowered to do so. So like community participation is a real challenge in the current scenario. Private practitioners, like we have 75-80% of the caseload is handled by the private practitioner. Same is the situation in many other countries. And if we are keeping them out of the program net, then we cannot be successful. So we need to include them as well. Managing complex emergencies such as COVID-19, whatever comes, whatever complex emergencies come, the activities, the core activities should go on, and our system should be ready to take on such emergencies without disruption of the main activities. There are biological challenges to eradication, which can be divided as parasitic challenges, vector challenges, and zoonotic spillover. Parasitic challenges, the drug resistance is there. We know Plasmodium develops the drug resistance very quickly, and in the graph you can see initially it took 16 years to develop the drug resistance for the chloroquine, but then for Fansidar just 6 years, Mefloquine 4 years, and Atovaquone just 6 months. You can see how the parasite smartly manages its survival. Similarly, detection has also become a challenge. The RTT, which are based on expression of detection of PFHRP2 and PFHRP3 proteins, now the Plasmodium falciparum has deleted the gene which is responsible for the expression of these proteins. So we heard about developing a stealth warplane to which will dodge the enemy radars and will not be detected. But you see the smartness of the Plasmodium here. It has managed that as well. So this gives us understanding how smart is this parasite and how it can throw newer challenges every day. So we need to be prepared to handle these challenges. Coming to vector challenges, insecticide resistance that is growing every day, and then a newer problem of outdoor transmission is also coming, which is again becoming bigger and bigger. There is something called zoonotic spillover. There are many simian Plasmodium species which threaten this zoonotic spillover. Few of them are in stage 2. Stage 2 means humans are getting infected by this simian malaria, but only thing is that there is no establishment of human to human transmission as yet. But if that happens, then we have a bigger problem. We will have zoonotic malaria as well.
Oh God.
So to tackle these biological problems, we need to innovate and adapt or bring in the newer tools. So information technology and the data hubs are important to generate, to gather the evidence and make the surveillance systems robust. Similarly, as we discussed, there is deletions and the detection has become a problem now. So we need newer diagnostics. We need newer medicines which will overcome the resistance. Killing of hypnocytes, is very important. We use Primaquine for 14 days, which brings down the compliance, and hence it becomes difficult to radically treat that person. So there is a new drug now, Difenoquine, which can be used as a single dose. So we need such more drugs for malaria treatment. We also need simplifying regimen. A single dose should be able to radically cure the disease and also should give protection for longer duration. Drug needs to be deployed strategically. Where it needs more, they should be available at that point of time. Then endectocides. This is a newer concept again. Ivermectin is one such drug. If we consume a dose of ivermectin, then over a period of 28 days, if mosquito bites me, takes a blood meal on me, then the mosquito will die. So that seems to be quite promising, and if it becomes successful, will be very helpful. Then monoclonal antibodies are also promising. These monoclonal antibodies will give a longer duration protections against malaria, and this will be helpful for to curtail the seasonal rise in the malaria or someone who travels to the high risk zone. Coming to vaccines, there are around 16 candidate vaccines at present. One vaccine has been approved for use in young children 5 to 17 years, and it gives around 36% protection for 4 years. The vaccine development for malaria has been a painful story, but still the development is going on, and we know how important it is for eradication of the malaria. Insecticides. So to overcome the resistance, we need newer insecticides. For last 30 years, there has been only one insecticide that has been approved for residual sprays, chlorothianidin. Another one, chlorpheniramine, is under evaluation, and piperonyl butoxide can be useful in areas where pyrethroid resistance has been observed. This is a latest. These are the latest additions, and this was possible because of a lot of funding and lot of research by agrochemical industries and initiatives such as Zero by 40. We need longer lasting insecticides. 50% of program budget is used by the insecticides alone. So if we have a longer lasting insecticide, we will need only one spray rather than the 2 spray per year, and that will halt the expenses. We also need to develop products for outdoor transmission, such as insecticide treated clothing, whiteproof clothing, sugar beds, or special repellents. One more innovation that is under consideration is gene drive. This is controversial and sensitive issue. What does this mean? This means editing of mosquito genes that confer specific traits such as sterility or immunity, and then propagating these edited genes through entire mosquito population to bring about the desired results. This is what is the status of these newer developments, innovations is, and what is the probability of their being successful, and what is the timeline that this may be available to us. You can see the vaccines is a distant dream, and its probability of being successful is very less. Gene drive system, again, the probability is very moderate, but then we need to wait long, and we don't have time for that. But there are certain good news, like triple ACT newer insecticides that we already talked about, insecticides, special repellents, they may be available within few years and can be introduced in our program. We need adequate and sustained financing to run the programs optimally as well as support the innovations. It is crucial for the success. For the last 15 years, from 2000 to 2016, there has been rise in spending on malaria. It has tripled from 1.5 billion to 4.3 billion over this period. And you can see the effect. During this period, the number of countries with endemic malaria dropped from 106 to 86. The worldwide annual incidence rate of malaria declined by 36%. And the annual death rate declined by 60%. So this is how financing is important. Coming to leadership, governance, and accountability. We can take lessons from successful programs such as polio eradication. They have a system called Independent Monitoring Board, which takes a look into this leadership, governance, and accountability. There are scorecards available which review the progresses and ensures and gives feedbacks to the leadership and governance. Malaria eradication also fits in broader framework such as sustainable development goals, universal health care, global health security. So to achieve this also, the malaria eradication is important. Coming to case of India, the burden is reduced. We know that. And then we committed ourselves to eliminate malaria by 2030. If you look at the program over last few decades, there had not been many changes. Implementation, I don't see any rigor in implementation. It's no one's baby, as we discussed earlier. But then what brought down the malaria burden? So if you look at it critically, I think it is the increased awareness of the population. There is increased access to malaria treatment and diagnostics. There is improved quality of life. And another hypothesis is, as water levels is going down, sites for efficient breeding of mosquitoes is also decreasing. So whatever achievements has been there, they are passive. Things just happened for us. And can we go into elimination or eradication with this mindset? I think we need to wake up and act. So to conclude, we are rethinking of eradication after 50 years of gap. Already we have lessons learned from the previous attempt. There are many challenges today and many new will come up. We need to have a constant vigil. A robust surveillance as a core intervention is very much needed so that we can take prompt action. Our programs need to be dynamic as the new challenges the Plasmodium will keep throwing to us. We need to change our program strategy. So it is difficult to eradicate malaria by 2050, but we can do it as we are better, smarter, and equipped today than we were 50 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deshmukh, for that wonderful presentation. It was very crisp and very clear. If you're willing, we could take some questions. Can we?
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, before we move over, I saw, sir, in that chart, multiple world graphs you have shown, no? World maps. What is the current status? With if we continue current intervention, what will happen in 2030 and what will happen with enhanced intervention? In that, if
Yeah.
we see India, like the African countries were still the major chunk, and the Southeast Asia was still there, but India
Yeah.
was not was prominently like it
Yeah.
was showing zero color there. So, what do you think
Yeah.
is where are we, sir, in India as far as this global malaria
Yeah.
eradication is concerned?
Yeah, we are making a good progress towards elimination. You can see in our report, many states have been very close to um, like very close to moving into that phase of elimination, like zero transmission thing. So we are already there, but we need to ensure that there is no resurgence or reestablishment of malaria. Yeah, so the national figures and what is being modeled by the Lancet Commission, these are going hand in hand. With the current trend, we can do away with malaria to a greater extent, and with enhanced interventions, we will certainly eradicate it.
Thank you, sir. There is a question from Dr. Bhatt in the chat box. It's asking about malaria vaccines. Do any countries regularly use malaria vaccines, and where they are used?
In some African countries, it is being used, and it has been licensed for those countries only. Ghana, if I remember correctly, Ghana is one of this country.
Okay. Then there is one more question from Dr. Bhatt. Why did they stop regular insecticide spraying, sir? I think earlier we used to see these people coming with the insecticide spray and doing it outside our houses. Now it has totally stopped, even before COVID. I'm not talking about after COVID, but before COVID also it has stopped. Why, sir? That's the question.
Yeah. So we have to look at the chain of transmission of malaria. Like susceptible, the reservoir is there, which is the infected person. Then transmission, which is the vector, the mosquito, and then the susceptible person. So if we want to control this, then we need to bring down the reservoir. So that is the strategy there is to early detection and prompt treatment to prevent the transmission from reservoir to susceptible. We need to kill that vector mosquito, and that is where the insecticide spraying comes. And to make susceptible person non-susceptible, we need vaccine. So we don't have vaccine. So that is out of question, that strategy. Then what we are left is with two things, like killing the mosquito through insecticide spray and bringing down the reservoir. During last phase of malaria control, there had been insecticide resistance, and this insecticide resistance was very widespread. And there has been some ecological problems with insecticide spraying as well. That's why it was stopped. Now the strategy is a focal spraying, where it is API more than 2. The small areas, there only the spraying happens. Otherwise, it is not there.
Okay. So thank you for taking that question. There was another slide which was very interesting. You talked about various strategies and how likely they are. What is the probability of them being available to us, and what is likely to be their success rate and all that. So I saw one about the gene drive in the mosquitoes, which is likely to be available to us in this thing. So we are in Pondicherry, as you know, that VCRC, Dr. Bhatt was also telling, and Dean was also telling about VCRC. If I remember correct, there was some research going on in VCRC where they actually genetically modified the mosquitoes so that they will not be doing this. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, sir? What exactly they do for the gene drive?
I know the applied part of it. Like they spread the sterile mosquitoes, male mosquitoes, so that breeding does not take place.
Okay.
Um,
So that is how they try
yeah,
to reduce it. Sir,
yeah,
Sir, what
yeah.
about this fish, sir? Malaria, mosquito egg eating fish, the Gambosia
Yeah,
fish used to be
yeah,
grown,
Mosquito eating fish,
all this.
yeah.
not malaria.
It is part of our in vector-borne all vector-borne diseases control program. This is used as integrated vector control strategy. The fish wherever breeding sites are there, these fishes are bred, and then they will eat the larvae, and we will have less of mosquito population.
Okay.
So that is very important strategy, and quite a successful strategy.
Okay. Then the other thing which we wanted to ask you was this, sir. You said that we need to take a lot of lessons from polio eradication program. We have one talk
Yeah.
lined up by Dr.
Yeah.
Jacob John week after
Yeah.
next on polio eradication. That other thing which you said that we need to take lessons from this, both in the terms of program management as well as in obtaining funding, like
Yeah.
our Bill Gates has taken over this polio eradication. So he's providing a lot of Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation is giving. So similarly, do we have a big daddy for malaria eradication anywhere in the world?
Yes. Yes. Now there are many funding agencies available. Even Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is an important funder for this program at a global level.
Oh, okay. But we need more funds from them, right, sir? We need to make a bit more effort.
Certainly.
Okay. Dean, sir, do you have any questions to Dr. Deshmukh? Dr. Kotur? You are muted, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Pradeep, it was a good information you shared with us. One layman question: we have been hearing about DDT resistance even when we were school going. That time it was there.
Yeah.
Which is the best
Yeah.
insecticide at this moment? Which is like kind of a
It is Malathion, sir. Currently, the program uses Malathion.
Malathion. It's available across the counter anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, and it is also getting resistance now.
Oh, Malathion. And now we also read about these insecticide sprayed nets are available. Are they here in India?
Yeah, especially in tribal areas, government distributes this insecticide-treated bed nets. And with Dr. Amol, we tried in many communities, bed nets are not acceptable, and there is no space to use the bed nets also. So with Dr. Amol in Varda, what we tried is like there are cloth wall hangings made up of cloth. So we impregnated them with pyrethroid, and then they were hung on the darker areas of the house, and we were successfully reducing mosquito density. So such innovations, small innovations need to be done. That was quite acceptable to the community, and rather this idea came from the community itself. We were discussing with them what should be done. So community came up with this idea, and we implemented it, and it was a huge success.
No, for having seen these malaria cases in our childhood and all, even though in Pondicherry we don't have malaria, whenever in the evening you sit or sleep, whenever malaria bites, sudden thing that comes to our mind is malaria. And then we are imagining, the mosquito curtains we are used to sleeping with that. They are not available across the counter like those malaria, insecticide treated Machardani, we used to call them, Machardani. Okay, good.
Okay. Sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have with us Dr. Amol Dongre also, sir. Sir was, I think, mentioning sir's innovations in trying to get that. Dr. Amol, you want to ask some questions or you want to pass some remarks or comments?
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. It gave us a very good and in-depth overview of what's happening in the field of malaria. I was really lucky enough to work with sir on malaria in villages of Wardha district, and we tried this uh, drug impregnated, insecticide impregnated uh, curtains
Walls
in
with
house. And in addition to that, we also tried not specifically for Anopheles mosquito, but some of our villagers told us that the septic tank of toilets also act as a mosquito breeding place. So we did a social marketing of some uh, mosquito net which can be tied over those vents of septic tanks, and that actually was trying to helping us to reduce the density of mosquito. However, we didn't do any study to measure the mosquito density before and after intervention, but they are very promising one. So I think we need some more work on that, how we can use more context specific and acceptable interventions in community settings on that. So thank you, madam. Thank you, sir, for wonderful presentation. It was really in-depth and very informative. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Amol. Dr. Bhatt, do you want to ask any questions to sir? Really, you're muted.
It was nice to listen to you, sir. It was good
Thank you.
information.
Thank you.
This vent of this septic tank, of course, they were doing during that viral encephalitis and dengue type spread.
Yeah.
This municipality people used to come and look at our rooftop, whether our water overhead tanks were covered or not, and these vents of septic tanks were covered or not. Maybe there are some issues, but I think controlling mosquito is not all that easy. Maybe whatever said and done, and I think you have given a good information. Hope that we follow some of them to reduce the mosquitoes. And mosquitoes are of different types and different thing, and some of them you can't even see, only start scratching when they bite. So they say that that small mosquitoes cause dengue and other thing. And they are more in the daytime breeder, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas malaria is more in the night.
Night breeder.
So anyhow, it was a good information. I also learned quite a bit. I don't have anything very specific to ask because information was extensive.
Thank you, sir. One more question I have for Dr. Deshmukh, since we have some more time, so we can actually take up some more questions. Sir, you spoke about the newer insecticide sprays which have come in. Are there any new anti-malarial drugs in the pipeline, sir, in various stages of clinical trials, or something which we are likely to get in this? Because the resistance of antimicrobials to the malarial parasite is increasing over a period of time, as you showed in your pictures. So do we have any new drugs in the horizon?
Yeah, there are many under study, but one has been recently approved in US. The name I shared with you, and a couple of them are promising and waiting for the approval. But there are not many drugs which are like will be licensed, approved. That's going to take time.
Yeah. Then one more question is, I think that last question for the day today is that we said that we have got this global malaria eradication trend or strategy to go ahead by the WHO. You had given us two deadlines, sir. One is 2030 and other is 2050. So going by our current trends, where do we stand, sir? Is this achievable goal by 2030? And 2050, can we eradicate the disease? What is the trend line look like for malaria?
Yeah. So, last time in 55, 58, when we implemented a similar program, we were very we thought we are very close to eradication. But then everything shattered and the malaria came back. Today the trend is good and we are moving towards that zero transmission. You can see that is there in the Lancet Commission models. But malaria, the parasite, should not throw any new surprises to us. That is very crucial. So we cannot be absolutely sure. Only thing that we can say is we are making a good progress. We need to like build robust systems, and need to keep innovating and adding newer technologies to our program. Then only we will be successful. Certainly, we are better equipped today than we were 50 years back.
Then other question, one more question, last question.
Yeah.
Coming to the epidemiology of the disease, do you think that the complications of malaria or infections with malarium, falciparum malarium, is much more compared to other strains of malaria than what we were seeing 20 years, 30 years back? Or is it the same trend, sir? Is there a change in the profile of organism and the disease causation? Are we seeing more severe malarias because the garden variety has come down and the clinically significant severe variety is the same? What is it like?
Yeah, if you see some 20, 30 years back, the Vivax malaria was like 80%, 85%, and falciparum malaria was like 10%, 15%. If you see trend today, it's 50-50%, and some areas it is 60% falciparum, 40% Vivax. And falciparum, that too with drug resistance, and in tribal areas where the access to healthcare is also not there. So in those pockets, it is more of severe, complicated malaria, and majority of deaths are occurring there only.
Okay, on that note, we'd try to thank Dr. Deshmukh, because sir has been very patient, even though we kept on adding one question. He had taken us through the global journey, starting from pre-independence era to post-independence to current things and what is the future projections. Like as you said, maybe we should learn lessons on program management, funding, innovations, and using new tools, and coming up with better strategies for eradication of the disease. On behalf of the Scientific Forum of AVMC, I thank you profusely for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us, sir. It was indeed a very nice session.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And before we close, we have some announcements for the participants. You can download your e-certificates from our link, what you would be receiving today with after the program. So you can download the e-certificates. We'll be sharing the YouTube link of the talk also with the participants. And AVMC YouTube channel has got all the recordings of the 40 programs. So if you want to watch any of our previous programs also, you can go and do this. And we have another interesting talk on one more parasite next week. We have with us Dr. Hoti. Dr. Hoti happens to be an ICMR emeritus scientist who is attached to the VCRC of Pondicherry. And he is going to be talking about filarial, global filarial disease. What are the diagnostic dilemmas, and also what problems we are having with the filarial eradication program. So that is going to be the talk for next week. So we'll see you again next Friday at 2:45 p.m. Till then, you can you try and stay safe and continue to take vaccines so that we could support the government's initiatives in getting rid of this COVID pandemic. Thank you very much. I close this meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.